Hi there, my name's Vicky and I'm going to talk to you about how the COVID-19 pandemic might be affecting how you cope with OCD. Some people might be experiencing these difficulties for the first time. For others, they may be very familiar feelings, which feel worse given the current circumstances. Whether OCD is new or familiar to you already, there are ways that we can help distress feel more manageable during this difficult and uncertain time. So, what is OCD? Our brains are designed to give us thoughts that cue us to take some kind of action. That's their job. When times are difficult and uncertain, it's natural that our brains give us more worrying thoughts more readily. Imagine your brain as a big magnet, with only the most worrying and most frightening thoughts getting stuck to it. Although this isn't fun, to some degree, this is our brain doing a really thorough job of preparing us and protecting us. Usually, these types of thoughts mean that we make plans or take some kind of action. Every human being on the planet experiences worry, and the more something matters to us, the more we worry about it. During a crisis, it's natural that these worries are bigger and scarier than usual and can feel really overwhelming. You're not broken, you're human. So what's the difference between worry and obsessive thoughts? Obsessive thoughts are a little bit different. They're scary. They often involve a really frightening imagined consequence. And these kind of thoughts often become very repetitive and can almost become stuck in our minds. The more we try not to think about them, the bigger and scarier they become. And so we can find ourselves doing things to get rid of them, or at least make them feel a little bit less scary for the time being. Problem is, often the things we end up doing can become repetitive, they can become time-consuming, and they can become quite distressing in themselves. And they also only make us feel better for a short space of time. So you might be asking yourself, why me? There are lots of reasons as to why we may experience OCD, including biological differences in our brains. We also know that our present and our past experiences play a big part in how we view the world and how we cope. Our past experiences, such as the jobs we've had, our experiences of illness and loss, past frightening experiences, and even the messages that we were brought up with can play a part in how we feel today. Similarly, our experiences during the pandemic are also likely to have played a big part in how we feel just now. This might include our levels of support at home or at work, our caring responsibilities either through our jobs or for our own family, the health needs of ourselves and the health needs of our loved ones. Often there's no one single reason for developing OCD, but a whole host of experiences that when all pulled together play a part in developing a big button of what we call perceived danger and responsibility. This button in our minds exists for us all. But for some of us, our experiences mean that our button is bigger than others and creates a bigger reaction within us when it's pushed. Of course, a global health crisis will have pushed this button, meaning that our perception of danger and risk and our responsibility for preventing it goes into overdrive. This can be exhausting. So what does the cycle of OCD look like? Our brain is an expert at generating imagine if thoughts. These are usually unpleasant and they're usually frightening. Sometimes these thoughts take the shape of the scariest and the worst things we could imagine happening or being held responsible for. At other times, these thoughts might feel a little unusual. They might feel shocking or shameful and seem not to make sense. These are the kinds of thoughts that cause us to worry about why we thought them in the first place and what sort of person that makes us that we did. Sometimes we can even worry that by having a certain thought, that we may cause that thing to happen in real life. Usually these types of thoughts go completely against our morals and completely against the type of person that we are, which is what makes them feel so frightening. The good news is that most people have these thoughts, and they're completely natural. It's just that we tend not to know other people have them because they're not really the types of thoughts that we admit to having over a cup of coffee with our friends. In OCD, when we experience a disturbing or a frightening thought, this causes us to experience a strong and unpleasant emotional reaction, as well as a physical change in the way that our body begins to feel. This can feel really awful and frightening, which means that the most natural thing in the world is to want to get rid of these thoughts and feelings. It's this desire to get rid which drives us to behave a certain way. In OCD, it's these behaviours which we call our compulsions. Usually these compulsions make that thought feel a little less scary, give us some physical and emotional relief maybe, or at least temporarily. For example, at the moment, our brains might be really good at giving us the thought, what if I'm carrying the virus? I know that's a thought I've had. Most likely, this makes us feel fear and anxiety. It makes our heart pound and our chest feel tight. Our brain tells us that the logical response to lessen these feelings is to wash our hands again. For all of us just now, this is a cycle we will probably recognise. We are continuously being flooded with messages from the outside world to be extra cautious, extra vigilant, and extra careful. Obviously, it's important that we follow this advice to keep ourselves and to keep other people safe. But for some of us, our brains may be particularly good at playing extra safe. And this probably means we're likely to go the extra mile and often to excess. We're likely to question how responsible and capable we really are. And this probably means that we experience more thoughts which cast doubt over the actions that we've already taken. Are you sure you washed them properly? Shouldn't you do it one more time just to make sure? Come on, play on the safe side. This is what our brain does. In this situation, we might find ourselves repeating the behaviour again and again. We might find that the behaviours themselves begin to take up more time or become more elaborate. We probably find that we have to do more and more to get that same feeling of relief and that certainty that we've done enough. Those of us who struggle with OCD often really crave that sense of certainty that we did it right, or at least that we did the best we could. And this means that we can often find ourselves becoming stuck in the repetitiveness and the complicated behaviours that we find forming our compulsions. The really annoying thing is, this works. Well, for a few minutes. Straight after carrying out our compulsions, we probably feel a little better. We feel calmer, our heart slows down, that scary thought shrinks just a little bit into the background of our mind. But a few minutes later, our better safe than sorry brain throws that thought right back at us. Are you sure you washed them properly? Shouldn't you do it just to make sure? One more time couldn't hurt. And before long we find ourselves stuck in a revolving door of fear, uncertainty, doubt, and compulsive behaviours. So before we go any further, I challenge you to have a think about the types of thoughts that you experience, how these make you feel. Have a think about how these affect your emotions, how they affect your physical feelings in your body, and the types of compulsive behaviours you find yourselves carrying out. Sometimes it can help to write this cycle down or draw it out, whatever works for you. But if this cycle feels familiar and you'd like to find out a bit more about how to understand OCD and how to begin to break the vicious cycle we can find ourselves trapped in, then watch the next video and we'll talk about introducing ourselves to what physical body sensations mean and how to cope with these.